a teaching assistant at the Oregon College of Oriental Medicine. That's where I went to school. As you may know, the Oregon College of Oriental Medicine has recently moved to Northwest Portland. And again, it's only a few blocks from here, which is really nice. They have a full herbal dispensary there, and I was just discussing with Beth, apparently they're starting to be more open to people just going in and requesting herbs without needing an appointment or to talk with a practitioner. So that's a really nice resource that you have right there with all those Chinese herbs. And if you, after today's presentation, you still don't have an idea of what you might want, you can go into the college there, and for $5 you can get an herbal evaluation. So you'll sit in front of a panel of people and they'll talk to you about what's going on and actually get an herbal formula out of that. Welcome. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the Chinese Garden and the Dow Tea, providing tea, and also OCOM for putting together these events. It's really a nice way to reach out to the community. And then I also just want to survey who's here. Do you guys have much experience with Chinese medicine or herbs or acupuncture?
Acupuncture a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, or Qigong. Qigong. It's like Tai Chi for medicine. Have you had tea before? Anybody have a favorite kind of tea?
Jasmine.
Jasmine tea. Okay. I'm an Earl Grey drinker. Okay. We're kind of going at things today with this idea of taking care of yourself during the season of autumn. In Chinese medicine, we do not only look at people's individual constitutions when we're evaluating what's going on, but we also look at the season, what's going on in the outside world, what are they likely to be subjected to in their environment. Autumn is associated with the metal element. The metal element in Chinese medicine is associated with the lungs and large intestine. Those are organs. They're also acupuncture channels, lung channel, large intestine channel. And there are certain things that we associate with the metal element. Certain things like the color white, the animal, the white tiger, as well as certain emotional and physical things. And you can take a moment too and kind of think about what the season of autumn means to you. What are the things that usually will bother you health-wise, or the things that you feel like you need to do in your life? Do you clean out your closets? Are you really reflective? Do you get lots of colds? Things like that. Those are all things that we might think about when we're thinking about how to treat the body in autumn. So a little bit more about the metal element. The metal element, as a person, has a preference for structure and control. They are fair and just, but seek perfection, logical and methodical. And they like to let go of that which is unnecessary. That's kind of a large intestine function of letting go, as you can imagine. If metal is out of balance, their integrity turns to hypocrisy and they get very rigid. Their desire for perfection can lead to disappointment. You can kind of imagine sort of an OCD type temperament. So we like to nourish the lung, nourish the large intestine, help them with the process of letting go, and with a desire for perfection but still flexibility. So, the emotion associated with the metal element is grief, but that grief can turn around in a positive way and be just a real appreciation of beauty, appreciation of life. It doesn't have to be a really depressing sort of grief. Sometimes it goes there. The other thing we think about in autumn besides the metal element is the water element, which is kidneys and bladder, because that's coming in winter. And we always like to prepare the body, we like to do prevention, so we would take this autumn season to also prepare the body for winter, prepare the kidneys. So again, some things that will come up in the autumn season are lung disorders, sinus problems, skin disorders, the lungs control the skin, large intestine disorders, constipation, lowered immune function, fatigue, and sometimes shoulder pain. The lung and large intestine channels run like this.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
So you were saying that you can have an excess of the metal. Is it possible to have like a deficit?
Yeah. you can have an excess or a deficiency. So physically, symptoms associated with excess in the lung would be lots of phlegm, or heat, like a very violent fever. A lot of things like that can be associated with excess in the lung. Or you can have a deficiency, which would be a dryness. Someone might have a really weak voice. The lung is associated with the voice and the throat. If someone has chronic allergies, you think more deficiency versus if they have a sinus infection, that's probably an excess.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about how to reason some of that stuff out. Another thing about metal is, it's associated with an actual metallic substance. And sometimes on the season we think to meditate on something that is associated with that season. So in this case, it's mountains. It's great to meditate on the mountains. Some kind of mountain. So just included a picture of Mount Hood there. And if we're thinking ahead about kidneys, we might think someone has problems like low back pain, feeling cold, hot flashes, urinary problems, infertility, things like that. Kidneys. Okay, so moving ahead, we're talking today about teas, which are technically an infusion. Herbs are just steeped in hot water, but typically not cooked at all. Traditional herbal preparations that you'll find most practitioners using would be something called a decoction, which is when the herbs are actually cooked. This is really good for extracting most of the powerful substances in the herbs and tend to get a really powerful result from that. Some herbs do require being decocted. Certain herbs like ginseng you have to cook for at least up to an hour, whereas other herbs, especially really aromatic herbs, having that short cooking time preserves the smell and some of those properties that you would want from a shorter cooking. So an infusion is a tea. When we say tea, it can be a little bit confusing because tea is an actual plant. It's the camellia plant. And sometimes when people talk about herbal teas, there's not actually any tea in them. And so the technical term for an herbal tea is a tisane, which you may have heard before. But in any case, we're talking about steeping it anything from 1 minute. If you have a substance like green tea is often steeped for a very short time. If you steep it too long, it becomes bitter. If we're talking about some herbs, you might want to give them a half an hour or even allow them to sit in hot water for hours in a thermos. Tinctures, I just learned, are surprisingly easy to make. You basically put some herbs in a jar, pour alcohol over it, and let it sit. And that's how you make a tincture. But it does require steeping for 6 to 8 weeks. So it's good for things where you don't need it right away. There's pill form, which sometimes the raw herbs are taken and rolled with honey, or some kind of other medium to create a pill. And then there's granules, which are the dried herb or powdered herbs. Sometimes they're actually there's more of a process involved, but they can just be dissolved in hot water. So that's a good way if you're not really excited about the whole preparation process. So I know that there's already been a couple talks in this series where they've really gotten in depth about tea and what it's good for, particularly green tea. There's a ton of research out about that right now, also a little bit of controversy. But the Folia camellia tea is the word for the tea plant, and it was first written about in the Zhou dynasty, which was 1100 to 771 before the Common Era. So there's a rich history of tea in Chinese tradition. So originally, tea was a custom among the nobility, but eventually it spread to commoners, and it's become really ubiquitous in China. At this point, everybody drinks tea. And there's stories about it keeping meditating monks awake. And tea typically can be divided into 3 types. There's green tea, which is unprocessed leaf or minimally processed. Semi-fermented, which would be something like an oolong, a pu'er, and black tea, which is your Earl Grey, English breakfast tea, more common in your British tradition. So you can alter the taste of tea by steaming it, roasting it, smoking it, pressing it, folding it, or rolling it. And then of course you can add many different things to tea. Some traditional things would be like cardamom in a chai, or tangerine peel, like that. Oh, and also, well, here's a quote about tea. Tea generates fluids, stops thirst, clears heat, eliminates toxins, dispels dampness, promotes urination, aids digestion, stops diarrhea, clears heart fire, and raises the spirit. What else do you want from a substitute? And then from a Western perspective, it's antioxidant, lowers cholesterol, prevents damage to arteries, and prevents clotting, so obviously very good for heart health. It has anti-cancer properties, strengthens the immune system, it's antibacterial, and it's rich in nutrients. So, it's kind of tricky today because obviously we can't explain all of herbal medicine, but how else would we kind of understand how to create medicinal tea? So, we want it to have some properties that are good for each of us as individuals. So, we've talked a little bit about how we decide what herbs are good for us. And when we look at the properties of herbs, we break them down in different ways. One way is the temperature of the herb. Herbs are either warming, cooling, or somewhere in between. So, for example, an herb like clove is very warming. As you might imagine, like that spicy flavor has like a warmth to it, and you want to drink it in the winter time. Whereas something like mint is very refreshing. It's also kind of brightening, but in a cooling, dispersing sort of way. And then there's also the taste of the herb. Herbs can be sweet, and we do include in Chinese medicine things like fruit as part of our herbal pharmacopoeia. So some things are literally quite sweet. And then bitter is another one. That's a taste we tend to have an aversion to here in the States, but bitter is considered a very good flavor to clear out toxins and things that have accumulated in our system. It's kind of a draining quality. And spicy or acrid, that also has a dispersing quality. It's good when we want to get rid of a cold. You think of something like ginger, helps to disperse that acrid flavor. There's also sour. Sour has the opposite effect of acrid dispersing. Sour brings things in. It's that kind of puckered, actually helping things stay contained. And then salty is the last flavor. Salty is good for breaking things apart, breaking up nodules, breaking up phlegm, and sometimes also promoting balance. And direction, what I'm talking about here is partly it can be something like some herbs are lifting, some herbs sink, and then there's also directing to a particular organ, particular channel. Some herbs have an affinity for the lungs, some herbs have an affinity for the heart, like that. And then we think about, well, what does the herb actually do in the body? What's its action? And these are the traditional 8 therapeutic methods, some of which are used less frequently now. One is to promote sweating. This is good when you have a cold. I don't know if anyone's heard any traditional folk remedies that, you need to sweat and then wrap yourself up in blankets, and that's going to be really good for you. And you'll see this in many cultures from the tradition of the hot toddy, which drink a hot toddy, just cuddle up in bed, and that gets really cold. Induced vomiting, we don't see this one very much, but you can imagine how when food poisoning was probably more common, that sometimes maybe inducing vomiting would be good for something. I don't know. And then purging is typically purging through the bowels, which is again kind of like vomiting. It's a rather radical method. We don't really use those much anymore. Harmonizing is generally when we talk about moving things or helping things balance. So that's a good way to treat things. Warming, clearing, tonifying, and reducing. Those are relatively simple, actually. The other things we want to consider about the herb is how does it work in combination with other herbs. Some herbs can be antagonistic. If you have a formula where half of your herbs are warm, half of your herbs are cool, they're going to kind of to some degree balance each other out, which may be what you want, but maybe if you wanted a warming formula, it's not going to do that. And then some herbs will help support each other. Some herbs can even guide other herbs to a particular area of the body. And then contraindications, it's just, obviously, herbs are very safe compared to a lot of modern medicine, but if you treat someone using either something that's not the wrong drug for them or at too high of a dose, you can run into some issues, and oftentimes it's just things like digestive upset, but we still want to avoid that from happening. Yeah, my example here is, consider someone who runs very warm, perhaps even has a fever. You don't want to give them cloves, an herb from the category of warm and interior, because that could actually make it worse. Alright, so I'm going to talk about some specific herbs for autumn, and some of these I have, so we can pass them around. The first herb is ginseng, which the herb ginseng you can find in different countries. The Chinese ginseng is actually something that you would want to cook for quite a long time. So typically we might want to use the American ginseng or the Siberian ginseng if we were just making a tea at home. We would still, because it's a fairly thick root, we want to make sure we get it in very thin slices so it has the ability to interact with the water and actually get some of the ingredients in there. The herb ginseng is, it's the coffee of China. And they say coffee is our ginseng because it's just amazing source of energy, kind of brightness, and just an incredible tonic herb. And the traditional ginseng even had an ability to moisten, it had an ability to calm the spirit. It was just a really incredible herb, and it can be hard to find the true ginseng. Our American ginseng is a little bit on the cooler side and better able to create moisture, which is good for certain formulas. It's good for the lung because the lung doesn't like to be dry. It's just kind of an interesting thing. But the lung doesn't like to have dry throat or dry cough. It likes to be fairly moist. I don't have a sample of ginseng, but I do have this next one, astragalus. I don't know, has anybody heard of the herb astragalus? Okay. Have you heard of the herb echinacea? It's kind of similar in its use to echinacea. It's great as a preventative herb. I mean, it's really great for that. It strengthens the exterior of our body. So it makes us less penetrable to outside invasions of what we would say cold or wind, different things that will cause sickness and disease. It makes us a little stronger. Boosts our chi, it stops sweating, facilitates urination, and because it has an uplifting action, it can stop diarrhea as well. So the next herb, reishi. This is the mushroom Ganoderma. Its Chinese name is linger. And this is one that there's been a lot of modern research about, it having anti-cancer properties and it really being strengthening for the immune system. The Chinese medicine nourishes the heart, calms the spirit, stops cough, tonifies qi, and strengthens the immune system. The next one in this tonified lung category is Ophiopogon tuber, which in Chinese medicine we call it Minandong. You have this one as well. There's a baggie of Minandong. This herb nourishes lung yin and also yin of the heart and stomach. So it keeps our whole digestive tract moist, keeps our throat moist, and it's also just a very calming herb. So let's see, and this one, yeah, clears heat, quiets irritability, and this one also moistens the intestines. So we could actually put that one in the next category too. So when we learn herbs, at least here in the US, we learn them in these different categories. There are a bunch of different ways to divide herbs, and they tend to, sometimes they can fall in multiple categories, but these are just a few categories that I thought were helpful for autumn. So only one herb that I listed in promote large intestinal function, and that is apricot seed. I picked this one because, again, it also can be used for lung issues. This herb bowel movements. It's a little bit on the toxic side, so you don't want to use it in too heavy of doses. So that one is this one, the apricot crunch.
Is it going to be possible to get these slides afterwards so I don't have to write it all down?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I didn't write down all the details, but I have them in my notes. So if you want to like give me your email, I can email it to you. It was just, yeah, I guess I could have made a longer handout. Okay, and then going on to the next category, which is release the exterior. So do you have an idea what that means, to release the exterior? This is kind of a strange term. So in Chinese medicine, you can have problems that are interior, which means they come of an interior origin. There's something that comes from yourself, usually from emotions, potentially also from, poor digestion, eating foods that aren't good for you or that you can't process. And then there's things that come from the exterior. When we talk about way back China, these may have included things like ghosts. But typically, when we think of them now, there are things like viruses, things that can invade your system, depending on how strong your immune system is. So when we talk about releasing the exterior, we are forcing those substances out. And we can force them out through our pores, through the skin, or through other means. But typically, it's releasing the exterior, is this forcing out of invading substances. So herbs that will do this are the herb ginger, which ginger is just used all around in Chinese medicine, partly because it harmonizes other herbs and helps digestion, but it has a very vibrant quality and able to release the exterior very dispersing. Warms the spleen and stomach and the lungs, harmonizes digestion, stops cough. Alright, so the herb chrysanthemum, which I don't have a sample of right here, though I did have it in this tea, which is now looking all mixed together. But chrysanthemum is this beautiful white flower. Sometimes when you get it here, it's a little bit yellow. If you get the yellow kind, that's better at clearing heat. If you get the white kind, it's better at nourishing the lungs and liver. So the herb chrysanthemum releases the exterior, disperses wind heat. So here's another thing we kind of have to talk about is when you get that cold, you're either going to get in the form of wind heat or wind cold. If you're someone who, when you get sick, you tend to go right to fever, sore throat, red eyes, then you're someone who tends to get a wind heat or, flu, really intense symptoms, quick onset. If you're someone who tends more to wind cold, you want to bundle up, curl up in bed, you've got a stiff neck, and you might have like runny nasal discharge and lots of sneezing. So there's heat manifestations or cold manifestations, and you want to pick different herbs depending on that. So, okay, moving on. Well, chrysanthemum has some other stuff, but it's good for brightening the eyes. You can actually take chrysanthemum flowers and put them on your eyes, so kind of water on your eyes. I actually did that for my cat. My cat was doing like okay, cinnamon twig. So cinnamon twig is a little bit different than our cinnamon spice. Our cinnamon spice is very warming. Cinnamon twig is a little bit more invigorating while still having that warming function. This is good for someone who, when they get sick, they can't sweat it out. They're just someone who has a really hard time, or they might be sweating but it's not getting rid of it. It's, their sweat is not productive. And then our next herb, scallion. Our next herb, scallion. This is something that you might have in your kitchen, also known as the green onion. It's good for the first stages of a cold, being able to induce sweating and beat out from that cold. Mint is good for wind heat, good for soothing the throat, and clearing the eyes, clearing the head. Alright, hopefully this isn't too much information. I was like just adding more and more herbs to this. And I was like, I've got to cut this off. Okay. Herbs that stop cough. So herbs in this category are particularly good for clearing out phlegm, for helping the lungs to move qi more direction. So we call it rebellious chi when the lung keeps coughing. Some herbs in this category are kelp. Kelp is partly good because it's salty, so it helps break up phlegm. Colt's foot, which is also the herb tussilago. I'm not sure which is the more common version. Good for cough of all kinds. Balloon flower root. This one, platycodon, guides to the throat, so particularly if there's throat issues, that can be very helpful. Tangerine peel. This one helps transform phlegm, and it also harmonizes our digestion. Sometimes phlegm can be partly caused by things happening in the lungs. So we say phlegm can also come from your digestion. You'll see that manifested in people who have food sensitivities that manifest with a lot of allergy symptoms. And then also, as I mentioned before, in the autumn season, we want to think about strengthening the kidneys because that's the next season to come. And some good things for that are goji berries, which nourish kidney and lung yin, liver blood, and are good for the eyes. Amber fruit. These are Goji Berry. Actually, Sander fruit, and that one, similar to goji berries, and then it nourishes yin, but it has more of that sour quality, which, as I was mentioning, helps contain things. So this can prevent leakage of different kinds. Leakage could be things like too much coughing. It could also be too frequent urination, vaginal discharge, things like that. Our next herb, walnut. Walnut strengthens the lungs and the kidneys, so it's a great herb for autumn. And it also helps promote large intestine function. It moistens the large intestine. So if you haven't been eating your walnuts, they're really good. They actually help improve sperm count. And then clove, as I mentioned, clove is just a really nice warming herb if you're someone who tends to be cold all the time. Then adding a little bit of clove to your tea is not a bad idea. So I'm going to talk about 3 formulas that you might consider taking. This first one is just sort of an everyday tonic tea. This is something that you could prepare for yourself daily. It's kind of similar to what I have going in here right now.
May I interrupt you just a second, please?
Yeah.
You passed this around saying it was goji berries,
Yeah.
but the label says Chinese wolfberry. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, I guess goji is still sort of a Chinese name, and so wolfberry would be our traditional Western name for them.
Okay.
So,
Thank
yeah. So with this tea, this is something that is going to be somewhat moistening and nourishing, but it's also going to support qi. It's going to help prevent colds and, just kind of, it can even help with a little bit of irritability and mood things. So with these herbs, typically you're going to want to steep them for about 10 minutes. And traditionally this can be added with green tea. So I wanted to do something that could be used with tea. The thing about green tea though is if you steep green tea for 10 minutes, it might become too bitter. So I would suggest adding green tea at the end. So in this case, you would want to probably use the American ginseng, which is what's pictured up here in the top left. And get it thinly sliced so that way it can absorb some of the water. And then chrysanthemum blossoms, those are from the top right there. That's actually probably the first Chinese tea that I had in a Chinese tea shop. I was just like blown away by how beautiful it is. It's quite tasty. So goji berries, which will help with getting a little bit of a sweet flavor. And then longan fruit, which is a relative of the lychee, which is in our tea here. And that tonifies qi and blood.
So did you make that up, or is that like a long-standing tonic?
That's kind of a long-standing tonic with different variations. I've seen this in different forms also with rosebud added, which is what I have here. There's some rosebud in there, which you can pass around. There's a little bit of that rosebud is a substance that helps move qi. Sometimes it's used in more of a summertime tea, so I didn't add it in this one. There's different variations of this. You will definitely find that there are some like Chinese practitioners in China who will drink something like this every day for years and years and years. So yeah, there's definitely that tradition of having something like this. And as I mentioned, there are some cooling herbs in this. If you're someone who tends to run really cold, you might think of doing something like ginger instead of the chrysanthemum, something that's got some warming. This is a personal favorite formula of mine, and this is one that I've taken for a while as my tea, and I would do it in a thermos like this. This has a tea strainer at the top. A thermos like this will keep the tea warm for actually hours. It can even stay too hot for hours, but that's great when you have herbs that traditionally would be made as a decoction and would be cooked longer. You can keep them hot in the thermos for a while, and then you're going to get more of those properties that you want from the herb. So the first herb in this formula, which is Restore the Pulse, is for basically strengthening the lung is the main thing that it's for. But it classically was used when someone had a weak pulse. So that's one of the diagnostic methods we use, looking for the pulse. And this formula would be something that would help bring both qi and blood and yin back into the pulse. So American ginseng, which I have on that last page, is the first herb in this. And if you're interested in dosages, I didn't write the dosages on there, but it kind of depends if you're going to be taking it once a day or multiple times a day. So if you're interested, I can tell you more about the dosages. So that next herb, Maimandong, is that herb that nourishes the lung, yin, and blood, and is calming for the spirit. That one I think is going around or moved around. And then Shisandra fruit, because it's one here on the right, kind of looks similar to the Goji Berry, but it's darker and a little bit more of an affinity for the kidneys. This last formula is very simple and uses things that you might have in your kitchen, so I thought it was a good one to list to keep in mind when you're first starting to get a cold. So you're just starting to get a little bit of chills and fever, maybe a little bit of runny nose, or whatever your typical signs that you're getting cold. You want to take some fresh ginger, slice it up or even into strips, pour it in some hot water. You can even boil it for a little bit if you want it really strong. And then dice up some scallion in there too. That scallion is another herb that's going to help just in a mild way, but really good to kick out that initial cold. And then you can add a little bit of honey. Honey is just kind of harmonizing. And really people really like something sweet. You can add. So I'm hoping that you've gotten a little bit of a picture about how we decide what herbs to give people based on what the herbs do, but there's quite a lot to it. So I'm going to break it down into some of the fundamentals. When we're thinking about our diagnosis, we can look at it in terms of these 8 principles of diagnosis. The first is excess or deficiency. So, I don't know, does anyone have like a problem to suggest, and we can talk about how that can be deficiency?
Asthma.
Okay, yeah, asthma, we can look at, asthma could be an excess, it could be from phlegm, it could be, or too much heat, we talked about that. Or it could be a deficiency, usually of the lungs or of the kidneys. The kidneys help grasp the qi, they help with this downward motion of the lungs, and so sometimes there's kidney deficiency. Kidneys also tend to be involved when there's long-term issues from childhood. So asthma is often something that onset from childhood, so then we would look at the kidneys. So that's one way that we could look at excess or deficiency, and oftentimes they're combined, but I won't talk too much about that today because that gets really complicated. The other things we look at are yin and yang. I don't know if you guys have an idea of yin and yang or what they mean, but yang is our warm, energetic, active principle. It tends to be what keeps us upright, what keeps us moving, what keeps things flowing in the body, and has a warm nature. Yin is more substantial. It's nourishment, it's blood, it's more quiet, restful, it's nighttime, it's the dark quality, the shadow. And then interior, exterior, this is things that invade the body from outside or things that have an internal organ or are deep constitutional issues. And then hot or cold. So this can be related to yin or yang, but you can have heat arise from having not enough yin, which is a little bit complicated. Or you can have heat arise from too much yang. And you're going to manifest a little bit differently. So we also want to look at that. And then again, we feel the pulse. Each of the organs has a position in the pulse. The pulse can be very superficial on the surface. You'll feel it when you just put your fingers down. That tends to mean that the problem is more exterior in origin. Or it can be, your pulse will be very deep. And maybe this is an interior organ. Also look at the tongue. People always ask when I look at the tongue, what can you see in my tongue? Like we think all our tongues just look the same. But tongues can be very puffy and pale, or they can be thin and red, they can have a thick coat or a thin coat, they can have tooth marks, they can have cracks. There's just a lot that we can see in the tongue. And then there's looking, listening, smelling, and asking. These are the questions that we ask. We look at your complexion, we listen. Maybe, when you listen, is your abdomen making a lot of noises, or do you have a really booming voice or a soft voice? Is your cough kind of have like a phlegmy sound, or is it dry, weak? And of course all the questions. And smelling, that's definitely not an art that I have down. I think most of us here have pretty good hygiene, but I can imagine a time when hygiene was not so good. Maybe you could tell more from that. And then of course looking at the season, which is kind of what we've been doing all day. So now, where to get bulk herbs? As I mentioned, the Oregon College of Oriental Medicine, which is over at First and Cooch. They have a full herbal pharmacy. They would have any of the herbs that I talked about today, and they are open to people going in there and asking for herbs. If you know what you want. If you don't know what you want, then you can schedule an appointment with the clinic and do an herbal consult for $5. And they'll hook you up with a custom formula, which is really nice. So your cost of the herbs is additional to that. You can also find herbs at lots of places in town, like the Naturopathic College, Green Tea Apothecary, the bulk pharmacy in Southeast. New Seasons and Whole Foods, they would have things like Goji Berry, potentially chrysanthemum, obviously walnuts. And then some herbs you can get in the wild. For instance, dandelion is a Chinese herb you can get very easily. There aren't that many other things that are native to here, at least not in a similar enough form. But there's an abundance of herbs if we just want to learn more about them. There are 3 companies in Oregon that you can order bulk herbs online. They're Pacific Botanicals, Mountain Rose Herbs, and Oregon College Harvest. And I believe all of those, it's just pacificbotanicals.com, not roseherbs.com. And then I had to go in the herb shop on Hawthorne, even though they had mainly Western herbs there, you can find some Chinese herbs there as well. Another note about buying herbs, it sounds wonderful to have like this whole stockpile of herbs, but the fresher they are, the better. So if you're not going to use them within the next, say, 6 months, you probably don't want to necessarily stock up on bulk herbs. And you also want to keep them preferably in an airtight jar. If they're just hanging out in baggies, they're going to lose a lot of their aromatic qualities, they'll lose their potency. All right, I hope I didn't tear through that too fast. I know it's a lot of information, but does anyone have any questions for me?
No, go right ahead.
So I was, you started to explain the relationship between like yin and yang and hot and cold, and
Yeah.
and then we've got these 5 elements, and then we've got
Yeah.
5 seasons, and then we've got, and I'm trying to figure out how they all connect. Like, are some of these considered causes, and some of these are considered like symptoms, or what?
Yeah. Yeah, so usually we're trying to get at the root cause of something whenever we're evaluating situations. Sometimes it takes a while to figure out the root cause of it. We think of it as an onion where we're peeling back layers. Like, someone has these heat symptoms, they've got constipation, and we're going to start just by trying to get them to have a bowel movement. Then we're realizing that the reason that they're not having bowel movement is because they don't have enough fluid in their system. So eventually you're getting to the root. So when someone doesn't have enough fluid in their system, what we may be seeing is heat signs. Heat signs, dryness signs. And you have to get to that root. The problem is they don't have enough fluid. So no matter how much we clear heat, if we don't supplement the fluid, the yin part of the system, we're not going to take care of that problem. So that's kind of how it manifests. Is you may see heat signs when you're thinking too much yang, but really the problem is not enough yin. Yeah, so I mean the constipation analogy can be a good one because there's lots of causes for that. If someone has dry, hard stools, then that's usually our indication that they don't have enough yin. But if someone just has a hard time going or a difficult time getting the urge to go, then that can be not enough qi or qi stagnation. And there can also be what we call damp heat, which is kind of just inflammatory processes like you see with Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. And that's when there's just too much inflammation going on in the system. They might have alternating constipation, diarrhea. Did you have a question?
Well, yes, please. When you were going through the teas, the 3 different teas, you said you did not put any amounts or...
Yeah.
Could you backtrack just a moment and
Sure.
Either proportionately, are they like equal amounts, or if I was to go down to the shop on First and Cooch, in other words,
Yeah.
and get an ounce of this, an ounce of that, or whatever, what should I do?
Okay, well, let's look at...
Like if you're doing it maybe daily?
Yeah, just a daily,
Multiple times a day.
make 1 pot a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you were going to make 1 pot a day, like for instance this one, they might say to use 10 grams of each. Let me just see exactly what it says in here. But that's going to be too much if you're keeping it in something like this. Let me look at the classical proportions for this one.
Well, they would probably know down there if we're just rock a piece of paper.
Yeah, the thing is that if you were doing it the classical way and you were using the Chinese ginseng, it would be more expensive. And sometimes I don't do too much of that just because it's kind of expensive.
It's very expensive.
Much more than the regular herbs. But, so a typical daily dose for each of these, would be about 10 grams for the top 2, and then only like 3 grams for the bottom one. Is the way it's done. And you can kind of, if you did something like this, you can also kind of see how much you have there and kind of go a little bit based on that. So, because herbs weigh different amounts too, like this would probably be a good amount of goji berries for 1 day worth. This is probably in the vicinity of like 4 grams. So it's like 3 grams of the weight, so it's going to be enough for that. But the ginseng, 10 grams would be a lot. So I might say like...
And that would be enough, how much would you put in
for a day.
Each day?
For each day. For each day, I would say 10 grams would be a lot. So I would say 6, 6, and 3 would probably be good for a day. On that one, we'll keep it. Yeah, that one, I mean, that was not so much on the dose specifically.
How many infusions can you make from that pot?
So, well, this is just just talking about if you're going to drink it once a day, you would do like 6 grams, 3 grams on that other one. But you can keep adding more hot water throughout the day. It's going to get milder and milder as the day goes on, but you can, do 3 infusions and still get some flavor out of that, so get some worth out of it. Typically, when we're decocting Chinese herbs, we'll do two different decoctions a lot of the time to get all the potency out of the herbs that we can. So on this one, similarly, you might think about doing, if you were just doing 1 day dose, you might think doing about 5 grams of each herb for 1 day dose. Yeah. Sometimes, like in this book, if you're really interested in doing this, this actually is the book for it. This is all about how to do your own personal little 3 herb teas, and you're welcome to look at this. The first chapter is about respiratory problems. And he typically says about 10 grams of each herb, but if you're doing it in a mug like this, that's going to be too much for you.
We gotta go back to work,
Yeah.
so I'll see you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Amber.
very much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if you're interested in the herbal internship, there are flyers over there for OCOM information.
I wanted to give you my email address, and I
Yeah.
wanted to ask a couple things. Like, what reference were you using when you just looked up that, the classical proportions?
It's an app.
There's an app for that.
There's apps for so many things, and it's great when you're thinking about dosaging, like what is the classical proportion of these herbs, because dosaging is one of the things that can be a little bit hard to remember. So this is TCM Clinic Aid, and it has all the acupuncture points as well as the materia medica. And you can look up things by the category herb, name of the herb.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So PCM is,
TCM is traditional Chinese medicine, which is kind of like a particular style of Chinese medicine, but it's pretty widely.
is this an expensive app?
This one might have been like $10 for this one. I don't think it was that much.
That's a steal.
Yeah, I mean it's great to have. You feel a little bit silly like using your smartphone as a reference, but it's such an easy.
And it's,
Yeah,
other having huge books.
yeah,
Can
yeah.
I borrow your pen to jot that down? So I'm gonna just make sure I remember it. PCM clinical, what's it?
TCM Clinic Aid.
Clinic.
Yeah. Are you just an enthusiast, or are you somebody a practitioner?
My girlfriend and my sister both do this kind of stuff. And they know a lot of things. And I know almost nothing about it. And then I just happened to be in Portland, and my girlfriend called and said, hey, there's an herbal thing happening at the Chinese herbs, you gotta go. And so I'm trying to learn.
Yeah. Well, there's so much to learn, but it doesn't take a lot of knowledge.